Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Susan Linder, your host of Innovation Storytellers, where I bring together the very best innovators and their stories of how to help you tell a better story about your innovation. I'm excited today to be joined with a very unique talent in this space, someone who's taking AI to huge frontiers. And I thought our community would really benefit from listening about not just how ChatGPT is changing XYZ, or maybe even how customer service is shifting, but what happens when you get deep into the infrastructure of a company and begin to let the agents do what they do best. Looking for experts on this, I found Rob Bearden, who is the co-founder and CEO of Semaphore.ai. He was the co-founder and CEO of Hortonworks before that, a publicly traded open source company that merged with Cloudera in 2019. He was then CEO of Docker in 2019 and remains on the board there. Rob turned to Cloudera in 2019 to serve as CEO, where he led the restructuring and sale to the private equity firm KKR and CDR for $5.3 billion. And before that, he served as president and COO of SpringSource, a leading provider of open source developer tools, until its acquisition by VMware in 2009. Prior to joining SpringSource, Rob served as entrepreneur in residence at Benchmark Capital. He's also served as president and COO of JBoss, a leading open source middleware company, until its acquisition by Red Hat in 2006. So needless to say, Rob knows a thing or two about tech and its evolution over time. Now, Rob, when did you first get into the tech space? What year was that?
It's a long time ago.
Mm.
1990. So way back machine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly. I know. I feel like someone needs to cut me open and count the rings to see how long I've been working in tech, Rob.
Yeah.
You might
Yeah.
feel the same way.
I joined Oracle when it was not yet $1 billion company. So that dates me.
There you go. Yeah, I started in 1998 and I thought I was sharp because I had a Hotmail account and I was ready to dive in. That was my prerequisite for getting into tech.
There we go.
So, just start us off with a little bit about your own journey. How did you walk into tech, Rob? What was it about it that and innovation? About it was so fascinating for you?
You know, as I said, I have a lot of rings if you were to cut me open as your example. I've
Mhm.
been at this quite a while. And tech was in obviously very early formation stage. Oracle was under $1 billion, and it was really changing the landscape of how the Fortune 500 companies operated because they were enabling ERP functions, and that was very intriguing. Instead of going and being as a finance major, trying to go in and be an AR or AP expert or tax or compliance, which is actually where my background was, the tech opportunity gave me the ability to go show how to automate that. And I felt like that was cool to be able to be on the automating side versus the operating side. And then the Oracle journey led me through the whole ERP cycle and database and tool cycle that Oracle executed on so well. And I was very fortunate to be able to be part of that and learned a tremendous amount about the value of automation through tech and how software operated to do that. And then that led to many other opportunities and, in the future for me.
So you were an automation head from jump, right? I mean, we used to call ERP systems when we were trying to explain them to other people, we called it middleware, right?
Mhm.
Because people didn't even know how to think about enterprise resource planning, right? I mean, this was like we were really at the beginnings of trying to explain to people how one piece of the organization connected with another digitally. So, but you dove right into the automation side of the equation.
Straight out.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And to see how a central view of an end-to-end process could work, which was the promise of ERP systems
Hmm.
and how they completed the end-to-end cycle across the enterprise and have a common view of all their data and all their processes. And so that I got the ability to see that day one in my first job out of school.
Right, which is really fascinating. I had guests from SAP on not too long ago, and we were kind of walking down memory lane on some of those deployments too, and deconstructing how an airliner, an airline looks at every single operational process and then maps it is no small task. And I feel like we're standing on the horizon with AI of the need to put on those lenses again for a moment and say, how do we begin to reimagine what the architecture and the infrastructure of organizations look like when humans don't have a hand in moving the ball down the field, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what it feels like to me. What agentic AI is like there are other hands, invisible hands moving the ball down the field. Is that what it feels like for you?
That's I think that's the real power that's been created by AI is
Mm.
we understand each step of that process and each sub-step underneath each process. And that's either written down somewhere or on a flow
Hopefully,
diagram
hopefully.
somewhere. And what we have the ability to do now is to load that in to AI, and AI can enable that workflow automatically to accomplish an outcome. And so it looks at the end product outcome and really understands how to map backwards each one of those steps and sub steps and how to bring that into an AI driven automation that delivers a best practice outcome that everybody is trying to drive to. And I think it's an abstraction from all of the manual steps and processes and has the ability to create the best practice outcome with de minimis human engagement through that cycle. And I think that's what unlocks massive value in terms of efficiency. But I think equally with that, it's certainly about the unit economics of the efficiency, but it's the value of the accuracy and
Mm.
predictability and consistency behind that accuracy that lets business models now operate much faster with more velocity between how they engage with their customers, their products, their supply chains. And the value behind that velocity and its accuracy is what opens up the next generation of business models. And that is what's in formation from the art of the possible behind AI.
Yeah, that's what's super exciting, right? Because we don't even know. We don't even know necessarily what's on the other side of it, right? Is of what else could we be doing that we haven't even thought of. So at the moment, when you go to a customer, you're asking the question, what do you want to get done? I imagine that's what the beginning of a sales conversation looks like is tell us what you want to get done. And then it's still the humans designing the strategy, right? Can you give us an example maybe of a client where you're talking about how we're starting to build, let's say, a financial infrastructure and thinking, putting a different hat on to look at it or using different lenses to look at it?
It's exactly the point you raised and brought up. It's tell me what you want to get done. Tell me about your
Mm.
outcome. Tell me about your best practice. And then we revert back, but it's also tell me about how you operate today. What are the steps? What are the different systems? What are the different data sources? What does the human engagement with data and the different apps look like in order to get to the outcome? And what are the constraints in between? So it's that full circle in the how do you do it today? What are those constraints? What's the goal and the outcome that you're trying to deliver for your compliance group, your auditors, your product outcome, your customer deliverable, whatever the end goal is. And then our job is then to show here's how we can enable you as the owner of that outcome as the line of business process owner that has to deliver the outcome for your customer, your auditor, or your tax group that the company's benchmarked on. And we can apply AI and show you how we can deliver that outcome in the most effective, efficient way with the highest points of accuracy and efficiencies.
Mm.
And what it does is it allows the humans to go to higher level decision making, more strategic decision making, and it creates efficiency in getting to the outcome that is predictable, it's consistent, it's repeatable from an accuracy standpoint, and a delivery of the best practice metrics that they're building for that customer process, that customer service process, the filings on a quarterly basis for revenue, expense, et cetera. And now we're able to do that in a highly automated, consistently accurate, predictable way. And some examples of that where we tend to focus in our workflows in the back office of the CFO. And so
Okay.
what we've looked at are things like, let's look at your order to cash cycle. And what are the biggest, we know what you have to be able to be at the end of the quarter, the ability to file in your quarterly report.
Right.
Um, we,
So when
we,
we're talking order to cash cycle for my friends who are not necessarily sitting in the CFO's office, we're talking about you get an order and how quickly does that convert to cash, right? How quickly does that convert to money in the bank paid by
Mhm.
the customer to us for said service or product?
We get an order in. What was it? Was it correct? Did we have all the right information in there? We then have to then make sure that we can send and ship the things that the customer ordered to them accurately with the right product in the right place, the right configuration, and that we bill them correctly per the terms of our agreement and our contract and the location it's going to and the volume of the order they just placed. And then we have to go through a collection cycle. And actually, once that invoice is sent, that invoice, if it's not accurate, they're going to have questions. And how do we get questions resolved accurately, efficiently, collect the cash, and then book the inbound cash in as a transaction in our ledgers, and that we then report the sell and the collection of that cash as a good and accurate order in the quarter and roll that up with the rest of our quarterly transactions and report it correctly. And so there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of different manual processes that engage with different data sets, with different data and document formats, and different applications. And we have the ability to look at that from an outcome standpoint that we need to get to in each one of those segments. So we'll start with invoicing. We look at someone's invoicing process, and I think it's probably an industry benchmark that we find pretty predictable. It can take anywhere from 3 to 5 hours per invoice to reconcile them correctly when you're
Mm-hmm.
going through an invoice reconciliation process. And it tends to take in that process a human to do that, a team of anywhere from 8 to 30 people in a $1 to $5 billion company. That tends to be the metric. And
Wow.
what we've been able to get to is we can do invoice reconciliations and things that took 3 hours down to 2 minutes. But more importantly, the accuracy, we're seeing 94 to 96% of those invoices we're able to do automatically without human touch, and only take 3 to 5% of the invoices that need a human in the loop to give it its context behind whatever question's there, and then it's resolved in the next cycle. But that's the kind of efficiency and accuracy with predictability, just in a simple use case like invoice reconciliation, that AI is able to do.
Yeah. We were talking before we hit record and you were telling us a little bit about your work with Coke. Is that Coke Industries, not Coca-Cola? So is that some of the work that you're doing with them in the finance suite?
That's one of the things we're doing with Coke, but we're doing this with in multiple other places as well. And Coke's been a great customer and a great co-dev partner, and a lot of lessons learned at Coke we've been able to take to other parts of our customer base and vice versa from other parts of the customer back to Coke. We went from invoice reconciliation, automation to payment from a payment reconciliation standpoint. And so that was a natural evolution going from invoicing to payment. And
Hmm.
then and then we were able to then take that to the next step in the workflow to go to accounts payable help desk. So as invoices go out, they may, if they've not been automated with an AI capability and they're done in the traditional manual ERP generated models, they tend to be inaccurate more than not. And so what that creates is a delay cycle ultimately in the customer getting their cash because the invoice isn't right. The customer wants to understand what's the, I gave you an order that, and you billed me for something very different. And we need to reconcile this so that I pay correctly because I can only pay from an accurate invoice.
Sure.
And so we've been able to automate that cycle for them.
Tell us a little bit about if you were in tech in the 90s, no tech implementation goes off without a hitch. What are some of the bumps people can anticipate about doing AI? What are the lessons that you maybe had to learn the hard way?
Well, it starts with what's the art of the possible. What can AI do for me? What should be my outcome that I should expect? And then it's where do I start and how do I get started? So how do I prepare my data? Because ultimately I want AI to give me an outcome, but I've got to
Mhm.
be able to trust that outcome. It's got to be secure as it's building that workflow. It's got to be secure in how it's ingressing and egressing my data. It's got to be accurate in the work it's doing. It's got to be fast exponentially than my human process. And I've got to be able to extend it across other workflows that are it's interdependent to, and it's got to be extensible to my system. So it's got to be a safe operating environment. And so how do I get surgically focused on an executable use case that actually is more than just chat GPT or a chatbot? It actually is moving the needle in efficiency and accuracy and core workflows that I have that I'm getting real value back. So how do I take a 5 hour invoice reconciliation process down to 2 minutes? How do I take an AP help desk and resolution process for accounts payable where I have inbound questions that take 2 to 4 days to resolve down to 6 to 8 minutes in a completely automated fashion? And what that does is it allows me to get paid anywhere from 5 to 15 days faster.
Which is
Right.
massive amounts of money.
And so the
Um,
point being, we have to know how to get started, what the art of the possible is, but then to be able to be very clear about the expectations in a very specific use case, and to be able to then go from a proof of concept that I feel is something is accurate that I can depend on all the way into what I report and how I report it in my quarterly earnings. And then I move it to production and let it run and become even more accurate on an automated basis unattended. And so that's a cycle that the enterprise has to go through in a very prescriptive way.
yeah, and things are going to go wrong, right? We're at a very nascent time in this. How do you get people over their skepticism? What is the story that you are telling to prospects around what's possible? How do you talk to them about helping them to envision what this future looks like that they've never experienced before?
Some of the lessons learned on our company is we had to get away from here's a general platform. You should be able to go imagine your own art of the possible wherever it may be and use our platform to go build agents to go solve problems generally. And people wanted to apply AI for in different parts of this, but they didn't understand the art of the possible and how to get started. So what we had to do is become very prescriptive about describing here is an outcome in a very particular segment of your operating function that we can bring a specific measurable outcome. I gave the example of invoices. I gave the
Those small
example
wins right
on
up first, right up front is the best way to convince people to keep going.
here's an outcome we can give you.
Mhm.
Here's precisely how we will enable that agent to be applied in your environment. And here's how we go through a proof of concept. And then here's how we'll go to production. Here's the chasm they have to go through. They're willing to do that in a very surgical way. They're willing to go through that proof of concept and see that. Ultimately, though, where the divide happens is great. We've had a very successful proof of concept. We see the deliverable behind it, but this is really mission critical automation. And if I highly rely on the output from this function that I've got to bake into my quarterly earnings number. And I've got to be able to really trust it, that it's accurate, that it's right, and that I understand if there's going to be a discrepancy, that I understand that. And so we've had to apply very specific capability into our agents so that our customers can know how to trust it. And that is, how do we run a parallel process between their manual environment and their agentic process, and to be able to compare and contrast those in the different configurations so that they are able to benchmark, scorecard, and have all the lineage to know this outcome is 100% accurate. It is something that I can absolutely rely on, and I can show my auditors how I got to this outcome that I'm putting into my quarterly statements. And that's an evolution process, somewhat done through tech and innovation, somewhat through being able to go through the learning curve of how to accept this new AI-driven outcome into something I rely on in my earnings reports. But that trust is happening much faster at higher velocities. And so we're now seeing the time of going through a POC into production really compressing now.
Yeah. The story that you're telling is we can build not just infrastructure, but we're building foundations of trust every step along the way. And I think it's helpful for other innovators listening to this to say, where can I get, and this is, the basic principles around innovation theory and how we actually get there is small wins, right? Very concrete examples, very clear use cases with reliability built in, because that is the springboard to replicability. And so if we don't have those two pieces, then we can't get into, well, let's revamp the entire finance system for the company, right? We're never going to get there if we can't prove that we can move invoices through the organization accurately.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't go through a back office transformation if we can't have shown and proven that we went through and automated each step in our order to cash, our procurement to payment cycle, and we're doing that now in production at scale with absolute certainty and accuracy of the outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be able to show the outcome and work backwards from that
Yeah.
as a way to make a market function, and to get the compression cycle from awareness to proof of concept to production. You've got to be able to show that outcome, work backwards.
Okay. So what's the hardest thing as you're talking to different enterprise leaders now, what's the biggest impediment to saying yes?
Actually, there's an easy yes and a hard yes.
Okay.
Okay. The easy yes is great. If you can give us that outcome and show us that, yes, let's do that on a proof of concept basis. It is
Great.
right. Like, fine, you understand my workflow, you understand operating constraints, and you understand the outcome best practice I want to get to. And we buy, so to speak, your technical approach to your agentic capability. Cool, let's
Mhm.
do it. The hard yes is great. Let's roll this out into production at scale in my mission critical workflows that will really move the needle because I'm relying all into my quarterly earnings based on the outcomes this is generating. And it's awesome when I can do it, but I have to trust it and I have to know it's safe. And that is the power behind the tech. And I think we're able to now, through the tech, be able to show the lineage of the transactions, the workflows in a way that the enterprise is really now able to trust the outcome as being accurate and reliable and willing to now move that into production full stop with the minimus human engagement. Now, the tech has to have all the safeguards and the guardrails in place and all the control capabilities that facilitate and foster that trust. But that's the job that us as innovators and we at Semaphore are doing through our platform. But as we get to safe, predictable outcomes that enterprise trust with you're going to see the massive acceleration of adoption and value creation that will happen with agentic automation through every part of the enterprise. I think it concentrates in back office CFO first. Well, it's obviously started in customer service and support as sort of one of the first big enterprise use cases. But where the big value creation is going to happen is back office CFO and then move into the CRM and SRM motions.
Got you. So it's the hard yes is scale,
It's production at scale.
production at scale. Yeah,
For mission critical use cases, yes. But that's where all the value is. Like the
sure,
flip
of
side of it
course.
is that's where all the value is. That's
Right.
what lets us get to next generational business case and value. But what we hadn't really talked about that I would say is why is this? Where does this really get us? What this does is once we get to the most efficient automations and outcomes with agentic capabilities in each one of our operating cycles, back office CFO, and then we'll go to CRM and SRM. What it does is it opens up the next generation of business models
Hmm.
that we don't even know the art of the possible of those yet. And the parallel is when the internet launched, what that opened up in terms of new business models for e-commerce, how that ultimately led to SaaS applications, how that led to complete digital engagement between how products were built, how the customer found products, how the customers bought the products, and how supply chains operated. It created a whole next generation of operating and business models. And that's what AI phase one that we're in now is just, it's going to unlock huge levels of value of efficiency and accuracy. But what that's going to lead to is then the platform to creating much higher velocity of operating models. And what I'd tell you is what I think we can expect is there will be billion-dollar businesses that are built with under 20 employees
Wow. Wow.
because they won't need the employees to do the workflow processes. Instead of hiring an employee or training an employee, we're going to hire an agent, train the model that the agent needs to execute the workflow on, and the agents will do the work. And that will happen in the next 5 years.
Yeah. And where do all the rest of those brilliant finance folk go?
Well, look, what they'll be able to do higher analytical work. They'll be able to drive the strategies behind these new operating models and how we engage with customer supply chain product. And they'll be enabling that next layer of operating and business model. That's what they'll be doing.
So how much longer before the agents write the strategy?
Ah, that's the scary part. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you let's play that forward. If you look at what's happened with just how code is built today, right? And
Who's
and
writing
if
code? Are people still doing that? It's like, wait a
that
minute, let me get my newspaper. Hold on just a second.
yeah. We've got a world-class CEO and Don Johnson at Docker. And as he's got a world-class AI strategy of what the next generation of AI enablement in Docker Desktop does. And as he's describing how we're building the next generation of product, our top tier engineers in the collaboration between Semaphore and Docker largely are not writing or even reading the code. It's the agents are building the code, the agents are testing the code, the agents are building the test harness between our collective products. And there is a human in the loop, but the human in the loop is doing single digit percentage of the work that they were doing a year ago, literally,
Mm, hmm.
because there has been so much on it. So if you look at that as a model for how quickly we have moved for agents building the outcome of very high value tech, how far are we away from the agents building the best strategies for the next generational operating models, business processes, and the products that need to be built to enable them? I think we're very close to that.
Fascinating. Rob, we're getting close to the end of our time together, and I want to make sure I ask you the three questions that I ask everybody who comes on Innovation Storytellers. Number one, what is the greatest innovation of all time?
Oh, the greatest innovation of all time, coffee.
Yeah, thank you. As I've been sitting here sucking on mine the entire time we've been speaking.
And coffee is what makes all this possible for us.
That's right. That's right. Before Coca-Cola started putting cocaine in the Coke. And then we went back to coffee. Good
And
idea.
then
Good plan.
yes, exactly.
Question number two. If you had the opportunity to join any innovation team in the course of human history, which team would you have joined?
The one I'm on right now. I have such a deep respect for my co-founders and the leadership team we put together and the team we're building. This is the right exact best innovation team that I've ever been on or with, and I would say right here at Semaphore, right now.
Wow, that says a lot. So you're not going back to Cro-Magnon times and making fire for the first time. I got it. I got it. You're right where you need to be.
We're making the whole next generation of operating and business models at velocities and value unlock that we've never imagined. And that's what's happening right now, and that's what we're focused on. And this is the next generation of the biggest movement in tech that we've actually ever seen is happening right now with AI and agents.
True. And lastly, what do you think is the innovation that the world needs now?
The
If you zoom
ability,
out a little bit beyond our world of AI, what does the world need right now?
the ability to find common ground and reasonableness between very disparate views. That's
Mm,
what I think the world needs. And I think, unfortunately, that's not something AI is able to do right now. It comes from old-fashioned communication and approaching things from a reasonableness, open-minded, and starting with love and how we approach each other. That's what I think.
amen.
I think that's where I'd love to see us get to. So
Well said, sir. I completely agree with you. And that all starts with a really great story.
awesome. Well, it's been enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me.
If people want to get in touch with you, Rob, what's the best way for them to do that? Perfect. Rob Bearden, thank you so much for joining me on Innovation Storytellers today.
Have a great day. Thank you.